guys on the coaching staff I'm not 100% familiar with, but I'll just have to do some more research on my end. I'm not a big like coach historian, so I have to definitely do a little bit more research. But overall, I'm just excited. I think you did mention as well as like head assistant coach. I agree. I think it's probably between those two guys, and Nate McMillan and Brooks as well. Both of those guys have had long coaching careers, and we definitely need that type of experience next to JJ Redick as our rookie head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. So for me, I'm super excited for the Lakers kind of stepping up their process, being a little bit more professional this summer, finally, and announcing our full staff. It took a minute, but hopefully this can kind of put a lot more things into motion when we start talking about making other moves. I think that's the first piece. Like you really can't have any crazy moves without that foundation piece. So I'm happy we got those things together. I know JJ Redick probably has been working overtime. I mean, it's hard, especially for a first time coach. Not a lot of people want to go in and take that chance to be an assistant on that type of staff. So I appreciate the coaches for locking in and being part of this historic process. I feel like we're going through with JJ Redick in this new phase of the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah, I agree. It's really nice for one to see a lot of experience. For people like who are new to our show, or you're watching through my Twitter, or you're watching on playback, whatever. It's something we've talked about since Darvin Ham got fired, especially just because we knew that JJ Redick could be the coach. Like obviously, a lot of us Laker fans have for a while now. It just really seemed like the most likely option. I'm not saying it was the best, but looking back, I do think it was one of the best. The issue is he has no coaching experience. You have to surround him with guys who have been around the league, guys and girls, because as we saw, we got, in my opinion, probably the best female coach out there right now with Lindsey Harding, with what she's done with in the G League with the Stockton Kings. She won Coach of the Year. And then, you look at the rest of the staff and it's like you see experience. Like I know Nate McMillan or Scott Brooks might not be the best head coach, when you bring in those names. I understand that. But as assistants, they're pretty high-end assistants, especially to sit at the front of the bench and help JJ. JJ has connections with all three of the coaches I just mentioned. I don't know if he has connections with like the other coaches that Alan mentioned lower on the totem pole, but he definitely does with the people at the top. It feels like a very good, thorough staff that has a lot of different experience, a lot of different kinds of experience, and they kind of hit it on the head. I don't want to give the Lakers too much credit for this offseason, just because, as we all know, it's kind of been a mess. We haven't addressed a lot of the needs that we wanted to, and the roster is super important. But in terms of coaching staff, that's like maybe the one thing you could look at this summer and say they locked into doing that. They took their time, but they also got definitely some really big names, and it came together really well. When I was at Summer League, I even had like the privilege of kind of hearing some of the conversations going around, like talking to people related to the Lakers on the outskirts, obviously not like Jeannie or Rob or anything, but like people who report and cover the team, people who report and cover the NBA. And I literally knew about two of the coaches, Bob Byer from the Hornets and Bo, I don't know how to pronounce it, but like Levesque, something like that. I think he was with the Clippers. I knew those two were coming to the Lakers way before it was announced in actual news. And that was something that was really fun, like seeing that process go down at Summer League. I also think Lindsey Harding was hired while I was at Summer League as well. So it seems like they were really busy with that there. My one thing would be, obviously, we don't need to focus on it too much, obviously, we all know, but they haven't addressed free agency and trade type problems or the roster. And I've thought more and more about it. And I think in general, like Lakers fans, we could all be very impatient. But if you think about it, in a certain sense, most teams haven't addressed stuff. Most teams have made a signing or have made a trade, but I don't see a lot of teams that took a step up. Like Philadelphia is one that comes to mind with being very aggressive and, in my opinion, getting a lot better. I know the Knicks, like with Bridges as well, come to mind. But when I look in the West, it feels like everyone's gotten worse. Like the Lakers situation would hurt more if the Warriors got Lauri Markkanen or the Clippers kept Paul George and got someone else, or, other teams around us improved. But it doesn't feel like it was a very exciting summer for free agency and trades in general. And I don't think that it's fair to put all of that on Rob Pelinka and the Lakers. I'm not defending them, but no one was really doing that much. I think, if anything, we only missed around the margins when you look at the opportunity to bring in a guy like Gary Trent Jr., when you look at Tyus Jones and the Bucks and Suns being able to make those moves with very limited flexibility. That part hurts around the margins. But in terms of big stuff going down, this summer was clearly a down year regardless for the whole NBA, not just the Lakers.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jake. I feel like we're kind of in a stagnant point. Like you talked about, there's not a lot of I'll use the word like marginal player moves, like mid-level players who are like just wing guys, good three-point shooters, just easy contracts to move. We haven't seen a lot of that at all. Only thing we've seen is a couple bigger free agent signings as expected. Those names to go off the board early, like the Klay Thompsons, the Paul Georges of the world, guys like that. We knew they were going. But as far as like moves we see every year, like the Royces O'Neals, the Cameron Johnsons, those guys, they're kind of still stagnant. Even on the Jazz side, we talked about reports over there. Not necessarily marketing, but like Sexton, Walker Kessler, guys like that haven't had any traction. Wendell Carter Jr., like just different mid-level guys like that. We haven't seen it. So I do agree with you on that point. It's not like, okay, everybody's getting traded right now. The Lakers just missing out. It's really a league wide no motion. So that makes me feel a little bit better. If everybody was making these little moves and making their teams better, and we were just not doing anything, I think it would make me feel worse. So I kind of agree with you too. I'm not saying that Rob Pelinka is completely off the hook for not letting anything happen, but at the same time, I can't ignore how dry the market is overall for every NBA team.
Yeah, it's just like with how the moves are making, of course, one of their pain points, of course, was his coaching staff, and they got some experienced things. They got Nate McMillan, of course, he did coach, I believe, the Atlanta Hawks to the Eastern Conference Finals that one year. Of course, Guy Brooks, a former NBA Finals head coach, he coached OKC well enough to succeed when they were young and rising. And although he's sort of been on the low due to, of course, some of the bad teams he's been on slash coached, but it's overall great to have a experienced head coach like Scott Brooks. So it's just like they have available players. I don't know who's from the Clippers. I think it was like Bob Byer or like Bo Levesque. But it's like getting these experienced coaches from other teams is very much a sight to see. Lindsey Harding, a great WNBA player and also a great NBA G League head coach for the Stockton Kings. So it's just like they're just probably on names, and maybe you could say that's our sort of free agency of it. But like I said, we can't be complacent, and it's just like we're improving some margins, but like I said, they have improved the entire team in a sense. So it's just like I'm very much happy with this coaching staff, but like I said, there still should have been moves that should have been made. You could say.
Yeah, not to be negative again, obviously, but no one's ever said a coaching staff won an NBA Finals. I mean, coaching is going to help a lot. It upgrades the Lakers, definitely. When you look at last year, and if we had a slightly better staff, definitely if we had a better head coach, we would have won 3 to 5 more games. That's kind of how I look at it. It would have put us in a way better position, obviously. So I do still think, it's important in general, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, you need to fix the roster. There's still holes. And I'm not saying like it's not a playoff contending roster. That's the other thing. It's the fact that it's not a championship level roster that's bothering me and I think a lot of other people, because it goes back to something we've talked about a lot, where we expect championships, we expect greatness, especially when we have LeBron and AD already here. Like, I do think it would be different if we didn't have those guys, if it was like the team we had with Lonzo, Kuzma, D'Lo, Julius Randle, Clarkson. Sure, like any roster is probably going to fly there just in terms of like the strength of it, but when you look at it now and you do still have LeBron and AD, and then as we'll talk about like the Team USA stuff again, and you see them like playing very well there still at this level, I think it's totally fair for people to be discouraged and be like, why did they not put more around these people to compete? So yeah, obviously that's all of our disappointment right now, but things can still change. We could still have hope. But I think I'm at least for now finally ready to admit that the Lakers probably won't make any trade, at least significantly, before the season starts at this point. I think I'm kind of out on it just because of the lack of effort, in my opinion, to do so.
Yeah, like I said, they very much put a ton of effort into this coaching staff. You can see, like I said, they got the big head coaching games. They got a very much valuable asset in, of course, Lindsey Harding, and they got new slash some former assistant coaches who have some experience. So it's just like they're improving in that section, but they improve the team overall. And like I said, I very much agree with you in that this isn't a championship level team. This could be a playing team or at least a playoff team, but we've seen multiple of that instances these past couple of years. And in order to get into that championship level, getting back to the Western Conference Finals, even beating past those great teams like maybe like a Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, etc. In those semifinals, you're gonna have to have a better roster. And as of right now, our roster isn't the greatest. Like I said, we have some good names, but moving forward, will those names be part of this roster? Will those names be the players that help us lead towards the Western Conference Finals, towards the NBA Finals? And I'm just not sure about that moving forward.
Yeah, me too. And I'll just add real quick, like when you talk about the coaching stuff, just to stay on topic, like I think you're right. And as I said earlier, it was thorough. But my thing is that means that they're sitting, like just adding that extra step of analysis. They were sitting around this summer, like how can we build the coaching staff, and required, I guess you could say a month after hiring JJ, or maybe 2 months total to do so in totality. Like they only just announced it now, instead of putting a lot of that effort into the roster, which tells me that they're sitting around like we have a championship level roster because of LeBron and AD, but we need better coaching and stuff around the margins, which I understand that. I understand you always want to improve in every area of the organization, but I do think they are a little delusional about what LeBron and AD can do, because at the same time, they're amazing. Two of my favorite players, obviously, in the NBA, but that's only two players. And I think you need 7 or 8 to win in the playoffs. Plus, you probably need 10 to get through the regular season at a high level. So they don't understand their own team, I think. And I've seen some really interesting stuff, like insight about it, that I can touch on later from like Lakers reporters as well.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I'm really happy that overall we got our coaching staff fixed out, just in general, once again, just to emphasize that. And yeah, I'm hoping that these next couple weeks, maybe it makes our process a little bit easier as far as like getting guys to buy in to join this team. Even like via trade, free agency, I know there's not a lot of names left, but you've seen like a lot of guys go for cheap. Like I'll bring up the Tyus Jones situation again. He bought into the fact that, hey, the Suns, they need me. They said, you're my starting level point guard. You can help us contribute to winning. They had a whole plan laid out for him, and they got him to take a significant less amount of money, and that's important. I feel like building those type of relationships with different players. So for me, I think we have a better direction of where we're headed towards. It makes us look a little bit more organized. I know Klay Thompson, one of the things he talked about is how behind we were in the process, which it was true. Like it was pretty much a dumpster fire. Like when we were talking about the Klay deals, like we had no coaching staff. We barely had well, yeah, we had no coaching staff. We had no direction of what things would look like. I think that was like before Braun had really re-signed and stuff like that. A lot of things were just unsure, really disorganized, and I feel like that kind of turned a lot of players away from joining with us. I mean, Valanciunas as well. I mean, I think DeMar DeRozan literally said, "Hey, I'm not signing for anything less than this." As well, he didn't even. I don't even think we had conversation with him, which was okay. I don't think it was a good fit, but still, I think now that we kind of got things together, maybe that can help us ease our way through the rest of the free agency slash trading period that we have before the season actually starts. So I'm feeling a lot more confident now than I was a couple of days ago, even though um, technically we're in the same spot we were as far as not making deals, but now we have a nice staff in place, so I'm excited about that.
Like also like put into perspective as well. Like my timeline could be wrong, but like in that time like that we were trying to recruit Klay Thompson, I feel like we were talking about Jared Dudley being potentially a part of our coaching staff at the same time. So it's like as you mentioned, when Klay mentioned like the Lakers were disorganized, it's true. Like I said, we were trying to rebuild not only the coaching staff but also trying to rebuild our roster, and you just can't fill those two tasks at the same time. As I showed my Rob like in those interviews, like he looks like he barely got any sleep. So, like I said, it's just a weird but of course struggle with the Lakers front office.
Yeah, and why was that he didn't get any sleep? I was a little confused because to me, like they didn't do anything that would, signify no sleep, right? Like they hadn't literally done nothing. And the more, this summer's gone on, the more I've kind of become convinced like that the draft for us was not like this big win that the front office wants us to think it was, just because obviously getting Dalton and getting Bronny is a win in the names that they are, the people they are, and I think the players they will be. But the Lakers didn't do anything in the draft that was how a high level front office operates. I just don't see anything creative that signifies like that they won the draft. Besides for Dalton Connect falling in their lap, which I think a lot of teams would have taken him there. I think the Sixers should have taken him there instead of McCain. I like McCain a lot, but I don't feel like they needed more youth at the guard. They have Tyrese Maxey for 10 years right there, small guard. Anyway, I don't see what the Lakers did that was so great besides sit there and then Dalton Connect fell to them and then take LeBron's son. Like it sounds negative, but they didn't do anything at the draft, and they acted like the reason I keep saying that is because they act like that was the transformational moment of this team this offseason. Like we got better because we got JJ number one, and then number two, we got Connect in the draft. Not even really Bronny because we know he's going to be in the G League, but we got Connect in the draft. Yes, that's true that those things can help you one or two games, but neither of those things are pushing you over the edge of being a actual competitive championship team. And they're still not there, and they never address that. So as fans we've all witnessed a lot of greatness from 2020 to 2010 and 2009, at least for us. Obviously, a lot of us were too young to remember like the three-peat with Kobe and Shaq, but I still feel like we've witnessed a lot of greatness. Only 3 championships, but a lot of the best players to ever play have been Lakers. So obviously we're going to be disappointed when we're not even championship level right now. And it's not really about like Warriors fans, Clippers fans. They like to make things competitive. We know that, but it's not really about are we better than the Clippers or the Warriors, which I think we are. We need to be in the conversation with the Timberwolves, the Nuggets, the Thunder, the Celtics, the Knicks, and the Sixers. Yeah, those are my teams I'm going to put up there. And we're not. And we should be. We really should be, especially with LeBron and AD, because that's the hardest part. The hardest part, they want you to think the hardest part is figuring out how to get Tyus Jones on a minimum and convince him to come to LA. But that's not true. The hardest part, especially with the new CBA, is how do you trade for a guy like Anthony Davis? How do you sign a guy like LeBron outright? You don't. You really don't. That only happens once every 10, 20 years, even if you're the Lakers. So they got that part down, but then they haven't bounced back from a recipe that worked in 2020 and 2021. And dare I say, like, thinking about it more, those seasons a little bit were kind of luck with in terms of like what the front office was doing. I don't think the front office did that much that deserves our praise, but I do think Frank Vogel did a great job, and LeBron and AD carried the team, and the role players stepped up. I don't really think the front office deserves that much praise for that, because they acted like that was their usual, but they haven't been able to replicate it in 4 years since then, which tells me that that was a little bit of a fluke on the front office part, that it worked out with Rondo, Dwight, JaVale. They already had KCP before they got there. They already had Caruso before they got there. They already had Kuzma before they got there. So a lot of those guys were just there, but they didn't do anything until they tried to change the team completely, which was the first big stuff the front office had done after the AD trade. That's when things went downhill. So I don't think they deserve that much admiration for 2020, being frank.
Honestly, you're cooking, bro. You're cooking. I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna triple down. I'm gonna quadruple down on the fact that this draft was given to the Lakers. We did not work for this draft. You're right. Dalton Connect fell to us. There's no other option. Like, they even told on themselves, like, we had this guy on our top board. He's the only guy. Like, we didn't see he was gonna fall to us. Like, it wasn't a possibility to us. Like, I agree. And then Bronny, I agree with Jake. Like, I'm really hopeful for Bronny. We know what Bronny is. He's going to be in the G League this year. He's going to develop well. I believe in that. But at the same time, he's LeBron's kid. It's not like it was like a super hard decision to take him at 55. We knew as Lakers fans, this is what was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen before the draft. I mean, what's his name? Rich Paul was calling every GM and saying, hey, we're going to go overseas if you try to draft Bronny. We're not playing for your team. Like, we knew it was happening even way before the draft happened. So I agree. I think Rob Pelinka, he's got to wake up, man. I don't know what else to say. Like, he has not done anything yet at all this offseason, this free agency, draft, period, nothing. And I know that's kind of harsh. I get it. But after the way the seasons ended the last 2 years, I know I was on team. We don't necessarily need changes, but that's just my optimistic side. Now I'm going to speak from our real side. We have to have some type of change. We can't just keep running it back the exact same way. We had a season with LeBron James and Anthony Davis playing some of the best basketball in their individual careers last year, and we didn't do anything with that. Nothing really 100% clicked at all. We had short periods of time. Yes, we had that one stretch of time where our whole starting five averaging double figures. But what was that? 5-6 games out of a whole 80-plus game season? Marginal at best progress there. So for me, you got to fix something. Like, I'm a huge believer in coaching is a lot. It contributes to a lot. Although I believe that JJ Redick base level, to me personally, is going to be a better coach than Darvin Ham. That's not really a lot to compare with. No offense to Darvin Ham. I'll say my famous line. I'm sure he's a great guy, great dad, great husband, everything like that. I'm sure he's a great individual guy, but as a coach, he just did not work. Not for our franchise, not for what it means to be a Laker. He did not fit the standards as a Lakers head coach, respectfully. Take that to the Pistons. Or back to the Bucks where he went with Prince. Bye-bye, respectfully. But yeah, I think Rob Pelinka has to step up. His job is to make sure whatever, I know the CBA rules and stuff like that, he has to use what we have, our resources, and figure it out. That's what GMs get paid to do. even if it's a small move. Even the most marginal moves can make a difference. Think about what we got, how we got Rui. We got Rui off of a Kendrick Nunn and some seconds or thirds. That's the Rob Pelinka I know. He took nothing. We knew Kendrick Nunn. I thought for sure he was a negative asset. I didn't think he was movable. I didn't think it was possible at all. So you're telling me we can't figure out a way to move a Cam Reddish if we had to, or a Jackson Hayes if we had to, a Christian Wood, guys like that, a Gabe Vincent. Like we can't find some type of deal. One team out there in the NBA to bite, just take a little bit of the bait. I mean, Rob, just saying, there's other ways to go about trades. I feel like to make this team a little bit better. So as much as I want to be like, okay, we're kind of chilling right now. As long as other teams aren't making deals, we're fine. The other part of me is like, hey, Rob, why can't you be the guy to kind of get the market started a little bit? So I know it's hard. I'm not a GM. I get it. But at the same time, we haven't done a single move. If I'm not mistaken, we're one of the only teams, if not the only team, who have done nothing since free agency started. Not a single thing. So I think I'm getting a little bit frustrated. Lakers fans out there getting frustrated. Um, I don't know, man. I'm hoping. I know we give our hot takes every week, and we all say we're expecting a trade to happen. I'm not saying anything like that today. I'm not giving my hot take yet, but I don't know if I believe in Rob right now. All I'm saying, Bob Myers, one call away. Genie, one. He's right. He's talking good about us on every game. He mentions us, name drops the Lakers. Just saying.
And can I just add real fast something interesting? Obviously, we don't have, as much specific Lakers news to talk about as we will, as we did earlier in the offseason when we were hopeful, but also just in the season. Like, we're going to be on here all the time in the season. I know we're going to have more and more people, especially Lakers fans, flooding in here, watching the game with us, breaking stuff down, and it's going to be awesome. But since we don't have that stuff now, I figured out kind of something really interesting about front offices. I felt like I learned a lot from a kind of a weird, unexpected place. I'm not always the biggest football guy, but HBO, obviously, a lot of you guys know, has a show called Hard Knocks where they go through different phases of the NFL season at this point. They may have like a training camp one, which I think they have for the Bears right now, I want to say. They had an off-season one that they had for the Giants. They'll have one in season like they did with the Dolphins. And Hard Knocks is like a really, really cool show. I think HBO does a good job of showing so much of the behind the scenes with players, with coaches, but also at times with front offices and general managers. And I'm getting to my point as it relates to the Lakers, but I watched the Giants one, right? And it was about the offseason. And they have a GM called named Joe Shane. I know his last name's Shane. I forgot his first name. And I'm watching this Giants like Hard Knocks. It's going episode by episode. And I see this dude grinding and sweating at random times, not just the draft, not just the start of free agency. Like this dude was grinding. He was talking to other teams, GMs on the phone, and they showed all the conversations. Like that's one of the best things about HBO and Hard Knocks and that collaboration is they show you everything, right? As much as they can, let's say. So he's on the phone at random times with this GM and this GM, and he's talking to this owner, and he goes to the scouting thing and talks to 3 more GMs over there, and he goes over to the Patriots box at the combine and talks to them, and he plants the seeds and all this stuff. And the more I saw from him and his preparation and the apparent grind, like he had this will that we're going to make the Giants better. Now, I do think the Giants will be better. I don't think they'll be that much better. They only really got one game changer. But I think the point was his effort and the stress, even the stress level he had. He said like the wristband he was wearing, the Whoop thing, said that he was at like high intent. He was like graded a 19 out of 20. And 20 means like you're extremely stressed for all 24 hours of the day. So this guy was like, he was on it, dude. He was in his office all day grinding. Again, why am I saying all this when it comes to the Lakers? That actually sounds like the opposite of Rob Pelinka. Sure, we saw Rob get no sleep. at the press conference look all messed up. But that was not because he was on the phone trying to make trades. I'll tell you that right now. I know we're fans. I know we're not in the building, but we have too much faith in what the Lakers are doing. There's a reason that people who work for the Lakers say they're one of the biggest brands in the world and in sports, but they're run like a mom and pop shop. That's what everyone says who's around the team, including someone I saw the other day who actually worked for the team said that. So that was, I mean, that's like a public thing. That was that guy, Laker Film Room or whatever, this guy Pete who worked for the team. So why, like, we as fans are putting too much faith in them still. I know they get a lot of hate, but we're still putting too much faith that they know what they're doing, because from everything we've seen, it looks the opposite of the intensity and the pressure and the effort that NFL front offices put in that we could see, and that some other NBA front offices put in. Like, I'm looking at the Timberwolves, who obviously they built an amazing team top to bottom, but in the draft, like, when they didn't necessarily need a franchise altering rookie, right? They're already very built. They trade up with the Spurs, give a future first for Rob Dillingham, who's going to be worth way more than that future first was. And now all of a sudden they have this young guard to add to an already young team that's already a contender. So they were like, my point is, they were looking for ways to get better even in the draft. You don't see that from the Lakers normally at all. Frankly, we weren't really looking for a way to get better. We said, who's going to be there? You could see the behind the scenes of the Lakers draft room, and all they care about is that Dalton Connect fell to that pick, because they aren't going around trying to do stuff like other front offices are to maneuver and get better. And that's a problem. And it was really a problem because in the last year when the CBA changed, we did not anticipate that. And most front offices did, including the Warriors, who are still kind of a mess, but they had a plan of what they were going to do with Chris Paul. They had a plan of what they were going to do with the Clay situation. And I think the Warriors are a little bit better for it, at least in terms of the CBA, with the moves they've made. And the Lakers did not anticipate that at all. It's very clear.
Of course, as mentioned, this will be a shorter podcast for this week. Like I said, there isn't a ton of news. We're waiting for the Lakers and also around the NBA. However, we have some Olympic basketball that will be happening in a couple minutes or so, around, I believe, 12 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, or if you're out in the East Coast, 3 p.m. Pacific time out there. So, yeah, Team USA is going to play Serbia in a semifinal, and the winner of that will be playing in the gold medal game versus France. And of course, the loser will be playing in the bronze medal versus Germany. And of course, as well, for that France game, shout out to Cordinier. He scored 16 points. Yabusele got 17 points. There, Batum with a shy 9. Victor Wembanyama with 11. 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and 3 blocks. Frank the Tank, if you know about him, yeah, the starting point guard. I got 5 points for that one. Rudy Gobert only played 5 minutes, so Rudy Gobert is getting a limited rotation opportunity. And shout out to Evan Fournier, who, although scored 1 for 6 and only had 5 points, he was very much impactful in that France game. And a little note around that: Fournier is still a free agent. So, I mentioned a long time before, if the Lakers were to clear up spots, I still like Evan Fournier. Not the best defender, could be inconsistent here and there, but if you need a shooter on your team who can, I imagine, be a good fit in JJ Redick's off-ball projected offense, I'd imagine Evan Fournier would be a guy who can fit under this roster/system. So, yeah, I'm just saying, if the Lakers clear some spots, Evan Fournier would be a part of my free agency list to include. So, yeah, at least for both Jake and Earl, what are your thoughts about this USA Serbia game? And if USA does advance, what are these projections when they do play France? Say if, because of course the Serbia game is not guaranteed as of right now.
Man, No amount of home cooking is gonna stop my glorious King Jet. No, I'm just playing. No amount of home cooking is gonna stop Team USA. France, I think that game, like you mentioned, it was a good game. Germany definitely was one of those teams that's harder to take out in Olympic basketball. So it was a close game. I know Germany was a little bit upset about the way things ended, but yeah, France, they got a good team. They're locked in. I mean, in a system where I was gonna throw Rudy. Do I throw Rudy Gobert joke in there? Fine, I'll do it. How does the defensive player of the year play 5 minutes in Olympic basketball? That's all I'm saying. How does the defensive player of the year, the best defender in the NBA, only play 5 minutes because he's not playable? Just saying. All I'm saying is Anthony Davis, defensive player of the year, should have been, could have been. Bam Adebayo too. He had a case. He was right there in the voting too. Just say. But enough with that. I'm excited for today's matchup. I think this is the third time we played them in the last month. So I think we pretty much got a good idea of their game plan. I think the biggest thing for us is to slow down Bojan Bogdanovic. He had a good game a couple games ago. He had a decent game last game, but it was really Jokic putting up, I think, 21 double overall. He played good basketball as he does in the Olympics. I think the pressure is just on our bigs to stop him. Joel Embiid has to get going off the gate. We cannot have slow Joel. We need Joel that we had last game to lock in and play versus Jokic. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if he. Oh, actually, I just got the starting lineups. Guess, spoiler alert. We're reading starting lineups. Starting lineups will be Drew Holiday, Steph Curry, Devin Booker, LeBron, and Joel. So Joel is playing. Um, I need it. I need Joel to be dominant. Jokic is a guy you have to be really physical with, and I need Joel Embiid to kind of take him out the game. Other guys like Boban Bogdanovic, I think Drew Holiday would do a good job of kind of containing him and making sure he doesn't get going. But I think those obviously are the two bigger names we have to watch out for. Overall, Serbia, they have a really good team, just base level. So we definitely got to watch out for those 3-point shooters on the squad as well. But for me, thinking ahead, like the gold medal game, hopefully we can get to that point. I don't want to be disrespectful and just completely skip past this game that we're about to play. But yeah, it's gonna be a battle, man. I don't know, man. I just don't know how comfortable I feel playing France in France for a gold medal. I don't know. Not saying it's gonna be home cooking, but we've seen how what was that game? Who did they play when it got a little bit weird towards the end with the whistles? I forget what team that was. If I'm not mistaken, I'm sure Alan probably knows or Jake. But yeah, hopefully it's a good game. I think that's kind of what we talked about. I think we gave a little prediction about that, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of weeks ago about France being one of the top teams we probably have to face. So I'm excited, man. Who doesn't want to see like Victor versus Joel and AD and Bam, and then you got other young guys over there as well. I forget how to pronounce his name. I'll let Alan do it, but he's been having two good back-to-back games actually. So shout out to him as well.
Yeah, I mean, I watched France Germany. There were some good insights from the game. I think Germany has been a little overrated just because, I mean, they're still one of the top teams, but they obviously won the FIBA thing last year against, I know they beat USA. I forgot who they beat in the other game, the finals, but they obviously won that. And I understand like that was going to get them some even more hype going into the Olympics, but against a France team that's kind of big and really very versatile, I guess you could say, for this kind of basketball. Like, I didn't even think it should have been as close as it was. I thought France could have won by 20. And then when I look at like the rest of the field from the start with Canada, with Germany, with Australia, like teams that were mentioned that could give the US some trouble, I just don't think any of that was accurate with how good this US team is. I think that the only team that could give USA trouble is France. And I don't really understand why people kind of had Canada over them in conversations. I know how great Shea is, but Shea would have had to be Michael Jordan for Canada to get past those other teams like France and Germany just to play the US. And I for me, the whole time, the only team I've been, I guess, fearful of, if I am, is France. I think they're an excellent team, but I still think they're the second best team. And if the USA takes care of business and nothing crazy happens in this next game today, I still have USA beating France by 15 plus, because as good as France is, the USA is on a different level, and they've clicked too. It's not just that the roster is the best roster and we just threw random NBA players. I think they've clicked and the team chemistry is at an all-time high. And it's really fun to watch this all go down live, because I was perhaps even a little too young to watch the 2012 Olympics, which was kind of like the last really cool one. And then 2008, I watched them a little, but I don't remember seeing stuff on social media as much about the team live. I only remember seeing a ton of stuff after the fact. So seeing it now live with this team is really fun. Like I said, I think their chemistry is through the roof, and I think I would be surprised if we didn't win by 15 plus today and in the final. So hopefully all goes according to plan, but there's a reason you play the game. And basketball is a sport that I think at its best is meant to be a semi-close game within 10 points. You don't want to see blowouts. I don't really want to see USA win by 30 today. I don't think it's like fun or funny. I would rather see a competitive game. A lot of the guys probably would too, just being competitors. But if there's the opportunity to put them away early, you obviously do it. But hopefully it is, semi-competitive, at least against France, if we get past Serbia today, because it will be cool seeing that generation. The last thing I'll mention is like Team USA is slightly, I don't know if we want to admit it, they're still going to be great every Olympics, but they're slightly going downhill because the leadership factor can't be like underrated. Like Anthony Edwards, I've said on here, is my favorite player, not on the Lakers. And I can't see him or Tatum or some of the other guys leading Team USA in 2028, just in terms of the way that LeBron, Steph, and KD are able to do it right now. And when we get to 2028, you forget also that France had 4 people like drafted in the top of the first round this year that aren't on the French international team, and they definitely will be in 2028 when they're not rookies. They don't have to be careful before they go play their first season and all that. Plus all the other drafts where France will have 4 or 5 people in the first round. So the French team is actually going to be stacked in 2028, along with obviously prime Victor too. And I think then they will be way more evenly matched with USA. And if we get that finals, this is like a hot take that won't be paid off for 4 years. If we get USA France in a couple days, I think we're also going to get USA France in LA in 2028.
Yeah, I'm also going with Team USA. I think they can compete versus the Serbia team. Like I said, I won't fully underestimate, of course, Nikola Jokic, and was it Bogdan Bogdanovic, but with at least the star power of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, etc. I think they should at least win this game kindly. They say probably 10 plus points. They've shown that they can at least be better than Serbia so far in these past 2 games, and it's just up to them. They have to play great defensively versus the Serbia team, who's of course has some NBA players and such former NBA players, and it's just like I said, it's just very much up to Steve Kerr to have the best rotations, have the best lineups, and play the right guys. Because of course that can be a main issue when you're substituting and switching the rotation / starting lineup every single game. So hopefully they have some continuity and they beat Serbia to play in a gold medal game versus France in this case. So yeah. Lastly, before we do end the podcast, to go into at least the later game for Team USA versus Serbia, live on playback. Join us there as well. We're talking about these going back to the past. Who was better, the 2012 Team USA roster or the 2024 this current Team USA roster? And at least for that starting line for that one was, I believe, Chris Paul was the starting point guard for that one. Of course, Kobe Bryant was the starting shooting guard. We also had, I believe, LeBron James at the small forward, Kevin Durant at the four, and I believe Tyson Chandler was at the center position. Going back to our starting lineup with Drew Holiday, Stephen Curry, Devin Booker, LeBron James, and Joel Embiid. And of course, like I said, the bench is the bench. And at least for both Jake and Earl, who was better, Team USA in 2012 or Team USA in today's era?
Man. 2012 was crazy. 2012 had every one of these players in their prime basketball form. I think that's one of the biggest differences between this year this year and 2012. Yes, we have a lot of top players all the time on this team. I agree with that. But I mean, we had Kobe Bryant. This was the team with Russell Westbrook on it too, right? Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Carmelo Anthony, right? D what? We got Halliburton on this team. No, I'm just playing. Um, I think I'm going 2012, boys. I don't know. Even Kevin Love, that was Minnesota to Kevin Love, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm going 2012. I'm sorry. All these guys in their prime, bag for bag. Like I'm looking at the roster now. Kevin Durant, prime. LeBron James, prime. Russell Westbrook in his prime. Darren Williams, I mean, even low-key, Darren Williams on the Nets was a bucket. Andre Iguodala on the Sixers. We had Kobe Bryant. We had Kevin Love, James Harden, Chris Paul, Anthony Davis, and then Carmelo Anthony. I think I'm going 2012. And we all know a big reason because of that is Kobe Bryant and his leadership on that team. And the way that LeBron James and Kobe were kind of going back and forth to keep the competitive nature of that team intact and teaching guys like, hey, you have to go hard every single practice. Like, and that's the thing I respect about LeBron too. You see that now, but who's the other guy doing that with him right now? I could say KD. I don't know, but I'm talking about as far as like practice mentality. The only name we hear as far as practices on this roster was LeBron James. We didn't hear anybody else really challenging him like that, like Kobe was, or Kobe and Brian. They were challenging each other, making that type of competitive atmosphere. So I'll have to say 2012. That's my answer.
I'm going to say 2012, man, as well. I just got right to the point. But, you know, one way of looking at it, like we talk about a lot, recency bias or whatever the opposite of recency bias is with the past. If 2012 roster was this year and the 2024 roster was 2012, we would still take 2012 this year. And that kind of shows me that like both directions 2012 is better, because even though we're 12 years away, even though I was only 12 years old, I remember you can't disregard the kind of aura, that's the best word still, around that team. Kobe is a big reason why, I'll admit. Obviously, we all here are Lakers fans. He was also slightly past his prime, maybe a year past his prime. But everyone else in their prime, and what do we know about LeBron in his prime, is probably the best player of all time. So you're going to have to take that team. I think the chemistry was even better with that team, even though I still think this team is really good chemistry. And then when you look at the starting lineup in particular, like this starting lineup that you just read out loud, it just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't hit the same at all. And I don't think it's just because of nostalgia. I think like if those two starting lineups went head to head, 2012 would win easy. I also think if Kawhi Leonard had been healthy, if Kevin Durant was a starter, and I saw the starting lineup of like Steph, Kawhi, KD, LeBron, AD for me, but you could say Embiid too, I would be like, that's the best starting five in the history of basketball. So there was a way that this team could have had a better starting five, but from top to bottom, just the mix of even the mix of play styles on that team was beautiful. It feels like it fits, and they feel like a team more than this team does. Although I'm still really excited to watch this team. I know we're like at the end here. I just do want to mention again, I'm sure Alan will. We're going to be on here watching the game in a second. I'm going to set it up as a news stream. If you're watching on Twitter, just you could go back to it. You'll see it'll say like Team USA. And if you sign in to NBA, you can watch the game on here live with us. So please stay for that. I know Alan and I are going to be here. Earl's hopping in and out. It's going to be a ton of fun. Yeah, so come watch the game with us on here as we prepare to watch Laker games with everyone on here for a lot of the season.
Yeah, and then I'll just add this last thing real quick. Looking at some of those like individual scoring games, like you go bad for bad with anybody. Carmelo versus Nigeria, 37 points. Like he had 37. LeBron James versus Brazil, 30 points. You had Durant versus Argentina, 27 points. Like we just had dogs on this team. Like I don't think people understand. Like this is prime Melo. Like this is Hezo Melo. Get it any way you want, Melo. Like prime form on this team. Nobody on this team, USA, is that. Like we're talking about on a team with Kevin Durant and Melo. Melo was dropping 37, respectfully, and Bron, prime Miami Heat Bron. Melo was getting 37 a game with those type of guys on the roster. Well, not a game, but he had 37 points. He had multiple 20-plus point games. Like this roster is good, yes. It's good enough for us to win gold. A lot of nostalgia on this current roster. I agree. It's one of the best teams we've seen. Yes, but 2012, dogs.
Yeah, very much plain simple. 2012. I just think they're the better roster. I think Coach K is going to out just everything. Steve Kerr in this case with his starting lineup. Like I said, he can go with multiple rotations that fit that 2012 roster and that can fit against this 2024 roster where he goes small / big. He could do anything with that 2012 roster versus this 2024 Team USA. So, of course, like I said, Team USA 2024 can win the gold. I highly doubt that they may lose, but like I said, there is some doubt here or there. But it's just like I said, this 2024 is potential and can be good enough to win the gold. So yeah, that's all for the Quest for 18 podcast. Thank to Jake, Earl, and everybody else down in the chat / watching both in Jake's stream. Of course, we're a bit overtime, but I'd imagine due to the scheduling that is the Olympics, the game should be starting around 12:15 potentially. Like I said, they have some scheduling issues around that time. So yeah. Thank you all for joining. Have a great rest of your day. Follow all our social down below in the chat for our X, YouTube, TikTok, everything, Instagram. We're everywhere on all social platforms. So yeah, as always, thank you all for watching. Peace, everybody.